Okay, wonderful. Well, welcome to the 24-25 End of Project Expenditure Report webinar. This webinar is being recorded, and this will be posted to our California Educators Together page in case you can't, in case you're not able to stay for all of it, or if you have colleagues that weren't able to join us today, they can watch this recording, and the PowerPoint will also be posted to our CAET page. I'll give you more instructions on how to access that. It's also in our monthly newsletter, and actually the PowerPoint is already posted there for you, but we will add this webinar recording, and it usually takes 1 to 2 weeks to get the recordings uploaded, so we appreciate your patience. All right. So our agenda today is we will talk briefly about the CPA grant timeline. Then we'll walk through the end of project submission tool that is in PGMS. We'll share some EOP reporting guidelines, and we'll also take your questions throughout the webinar. So you can go ahead and use the Q&A feature of this webinar, and then I'll pause occasionally and we'll take some questions and try to do our best to answer them for you. We'll also share at the very end some upcoming webinars in case you would like some more information, and then we will close. So here we have a clip of our grant reporting timeline, and you can see that there are 2 active grants at the moment. We have our 2-year 2023-25 grant, as well as the 1-year 24-25 grant. And hopefully by now everyone knows that we're moving forward with a 1-year grant. This is the last time you'll see this 2-year grant. And so this grant period, the 2-year ends on June 30th, as does the 1-year. And to do your end of project expenditure report for the 23-25 year grant, our fiscal analyst team will be emailing you out a paper version of the end of project report that you'll have then 60 days to complete. So that will be due at the end of August. So again, the 2-year grant has a paper end of project. It will be emailed to you by your fiscal analyst, and then you'll have 60 days to complete it. The 1-year grant, however, the end of project expenditure report for that one is completed digitally. And moving forward, it will always be digital. And our platform is the PGMS platform, KPAR, which lives inside of that. So you will complete this 1-year grant end of project in KPAR. And then there's just a couple of other things on there, just showing you that the KPAR report, which we're not going to speak to today, that is due on June 30th. So hopefully you started working on your KPAR reports. We do have a webinar for that also posted to our CAET page. And then Budget Builder, that this will be opening up on June 1st for you. So those that want to plan ahead and get a head start on their proposed budget for the upcoming school year, you can start doing your proposed budget in Budget Builder starting in June. And then you'll have until September 30th to get that one done. So this is just an overview of all the different things going on. But what we're focused on today is just the end of project expenditure report. So please keep your questions in the Q&A focused on the EOP. If you have questions about KPAR or Budget Builder, you can email us and we'll share those emails at the end of this slideshow. So the end of project expenditure report is required at the end of the grant period. And so we know we're coming up on the end of both grant periods at the end of June. Once the grant period closes, you then have 60 days to finish your report. And so both reports, whether it's for the 2-year or 1-year grant, are due on August 29th of this year. And for the 1-year grant, the 24-25, this will be submitted through PGMS. And we opened this up for you back in March, just to give you ample time. So let's walk through the steps to submit your end of project report. Step 1 is just to sign into KPAR, and you'll want to select the 23-24 school year. And we always work 1 year behind because our funding for the current grant cycle is always based on the previous year's KPAR data. Once you've signed in and selected your academy, you'll look at the academy section screen here, and you'll find the end of project EOP expenditure report link towards the bottom, right below Budget Builder. So click on the End of Project Expenditure Report link, and inside you'll find a table that shows all of the object codes, so 1,000 through 7,000, and you will see the amount that you budgeted for each of those object codes. And then you'll also see your 24-25 expenditures. So how much money did you plan to spend on each of those codes? And what percentage of your total grant funds each of those codes, each of those object codes took up. And at the very bottom, you'll see a note about the indirect costs. Okay. So here underneath the table, you'll see a note about that indirect amount. And just like in the budget builder, the system will automatically calculate the maximum amount of grant funds that may be spent on indirect cost. And this is based on your LEA's approved rate for the 24-25 school year. So this should be automatically calculated for you. So your next step is going to be to choose an object code from the table to create your report. I would recommend just starting with the 1,000s for simplicity, and then you'll work through every single one of these, 2,000s, 3,000s, 4,000s, and so on. So for this example, we're gonna go ahead and click on the 1,000 object code. Once you open one of the object codes, you will see a table that shows the budget narrative that you put in the fall, last fall of 2024. You told us how you planned to spend your money and what monies you plan to designate to the 1,000s. So this is for your staffing. And in this example, the CPA originally planned to spend $1,900 for 20 hours, $1,900, which was 20 hours at $95 an hour for their academy teachers' time for planning and activities and building curriculum. So when this teacher went to do their report, the EOP expenditure report narrative column here, this is editable. And so maybe you discovered that you needed to spend more money than you had planned for on this academy teacher's time. So originally you said it would be $1,900. In reality, this person needed 24 hours to get this work done. And so the total came to $2,280. So all you need to do as you're filling out your EOP is update these editable boxes with any changes, anything that changed from your original plan. And then on the far right, you'll see the amount expended column. You'll tell us just the number, the dollar amount that was spent on this line item. If nothing's changed in the 1,000s, then you won't need to, you'll just open it up and confirm that it's all the same and then move on to the 2,000s. Once you get through the 1,000s and make any changes you need to in both of these columns, at the bottom, you'll click Save and Continue. So really important to click Save as you work through this report. You might find, so this here is object, we're jumping ahead. Imagine that we're now in the 4,000s. So we did 1,000, 2,000, 3,000. We're now focusing on our supplies that we purchased for our CPA. Imagine that you planned to purchase maybe a laptop computer for data collection and analysis. This is going to be for the academy teacher only, work with the academy, but you didn't end up making this purchase. So if you have a line item that you did not actually spend money on, in the narrative, you'll simply change it to $0 and write something like did not purchase. And then over on the amount column, the grant period expenditures, change it to $0. So again, just to clarify, if you originally budgeted for something that you didn't purchase, just change the narrative to tell us you didn't purchase it and change the total amount to $0. You might find a situation in which you purchase something that you didn't originally plan to purchase. So in this case, at the top of the table, you'll see a button that says Add New Line Item. So for any purchases that you didn't originally budget for, click Add New Line Item. This will open up a box that has you input the line item details. So you'll first select a description, then a budget category. You'll type in the total amount expended, and then give a brief description of the expenditure for this line item. Once you fill all of this information out, you'll click the Save button at the bottom. Here's an example. So this person decided that they needed to add a line item for a stipend. The budget category was related to instruction. The amount was $1,000, and the description is coordinator additional duty time for completing KPAR report outside of contractual hours, which is allowable. You'd add your line item details and click Save. And then that will generate a new line item back in the main table. If you need to edit it, on the right-hand side, you can click Edit, and if you made a mistake, you can click Delete. And then you'll just repeat the same process for all of the remaining object codes. Anything that appears that you budgeted for originally show up in this table. And once you've gone through all of the object codes, you'll find the final submit button, and that will send your end of project report through to us. And that's really all there is to it. So just to recap the different scenarios you might have, maybe you've made no changes to your proposed budget. In that case, you'll just want to click through each of these and hit Save and hit the final submit. You might have found that you need to change the amount that you spent on some of your line items. In that case, please change the narrative and the dollar amount and save your changes. Another scenario is that you didn't spend money on a line item that you originally budgeted for. In that case, you will change the narrative to say did not purchase or something similar and change the dollar amount to $0. And the other scenario is if you need to add a line item for something that you purchased and didn't originally budget for. And in that case, you'll click Add Line Item at the top of the table, input the details of the purchase, and save. And you'll repeat the process for all of these object codes and hit the final submit. And then once you do hit submit, so this is the coordinator. We usually have the CPA, the academy coordinator, or someone at the district office. Maybe it's someone from your fiscal team, such as the district financial officer or fiscal analyst. Anyone from this team can submit this. Then it will go to your principal for approval, which means the principal will receive an automated email from us prompting them to go in and approve. Once the principal approves the EOP, the district financial officer will then receive an automated email prompting them to sign in and approve. And then finally, it will go to us for approval. So because there's multiple people required to sign off on this before it comes to us, it's really important to finish this in a timely manner so that you have time for it to go through the approval line. One thing that we have noticed and been working on here at CDE is with the proposed budget. That had to go through a series of people. And so when your contact information for your CPA is not updated in KPAR, it creates challenges because then these approvals go through to people and those folks aren't getting their emails. So if someone has retired, if someone has resigned from their position, please be sure that your contacts in KPAR are updated, that the email addresses are spelled accurately, just so that these automated emails that go through are being handled in a timely manner. And another recommendation would just be if you are the coordinator at your site, or if you are if you're the CTE director for your district, Just please make sure that all of these folks here are aware of the August 29th deadline for this, and that everyone has access to KPAR and has their login information now. This will just ensure a smoother process as this goes through the line. And if you need help updating your contact information, you can email us. But also, Academy coordinators, you have access to updating your contacts. So do principals. So do the CTE directors. So you can make those changes. I'm going to pause right here and ask my team what questions have come through in the Q&A.
Hey, Kenwin.
Hi.
So somebody asked, can we organize our budget category by vendor? This would simplify our budgeting and EOP.
Can we organize it by vendor? I'm not sure that I fully understand what's being asked, but as long as you're using the object codes correctly, so the 1000s, 2000s, and 3000s are all related to personnel, and then 4000s are generally equipment, supplies, you know, as long as you're putting things in the right object code, however you choose to organize it is fine with us.
We also have, just to confirm, we are only reporting paid expenses and not any obligations or encumbrances.
Paid expenses, you said?
Yes, and not any obligations or encumbrances.
Cindy or Michelle, can one of you chime in on that one?
Hi, this is Cindy Rose. You will need to add your encumbrances. You can encumber on or before the end date of the grant award. So that's June 30th of 2025. So you will submit the encumbrances.
Thank you, Cindy. What other questions do we have?
So one of the questions is, what is the difference between the KPAR report and the EOP report?
Oh, that's a good question. So the EOP report, this end of project expenditure report, is essentially telling how your CPA grant funds were actually spent. So at the beginning of the school year, you created a proposed budget telling us how you plan to spend your money, right? You plan to spend it on these personnel, on these field trips, on certain pieces of equipment for your academy, on attending Educating for Careers, right? You planned on spending your money a certain way, but we know that different things happen throughout the school year. Plans change. And so your EOP is a record of how you actually spent those funds. What was it actually spent on? Which may be different from how you plan to spend it. The KPAR report, however, is a different report. So it's also, you sign into the same platform, you sign into PGMS, and the KPAR report is basically telling the story of your academy over the current school year. So you're telling us about your students, you're giving us data on your students, you're telling us about your course sequence, your business partners, things like that. The KPAR report is what determines the number of fundable students in your academy, and that report is what determines then how much grant money you get. So that report, hopefully folks are working on that. That is due on June 30th. And we do have a webinar for that. It's been recorded. We offered a webinar just a couple weeks ago, and that recording is on our California Educators Together page.
So there's a question. What if you spend less than you had proposed? Then what?
So if you spent less, then that's fine. You can change it to less. That means hopefully you spent more somewhere else. Ideally, you're spending your entire grant down to the last penny. So you might move some of that funding to a different object code or to a different line item. However, if you don't spend all of your grant money, then the CDE will bill you for whatever wasn't spent.
Thank you.
Mhm. These are great questions. Any other questions out there?
This is
Yes.
Alicia.
Alicia.
Can you confirm the dates? That someone says this is for August 25th date, correct? So to confirm the date.
Yes, so you can sign in to KPAR through PGMS at any point. This is open for you to work on. It was opened mid-March, and you have until August 29th of this current year, 2025, to submit it. And that's for both grant cycles, the 23-25 grant cycle and the 24-25 grant cycle. They have the same due date.
Thanks, Kind Win. And another one, if a current principal's last day is June 30th, then how do we get it to the new principal?
So there's a new principal coming in the fall. Is that what we're assuming?
The last date is June 30th?
Of school, right?
I think the principal's last day is June
Oh,
30th.
yeah, so if you have a change in your academy contact list, if there's a new principal coming in, or maybe a new coordinator, you can go ahead and put those contacts in right now. When you go to the academy contacts, it's the very top of the list when you're signed into KPAR. And you can plan for incoming staff, and then that will update this fall. You can email us and we can help update information. Principal contact information, however, we're not able to edit that. That's done through Opus. And so when Opus updates a principal or superintendent's contact information, then that automatically imports into PGMS. So we're not able to edit this principal or superintendent information. It's automatically updated when it's updated in Opus. So if you have a new principal coming, just send us an email and we'll work with you to make sure we have the right person approving things. And I'll actually show our email addresses here. Let me click that real quick. And then we'll go back. So if you do have KPAR questions, you can always email us at kpar@cde.ca.gov. This could be questions about budgeting, questions about the KPAR reports. If you have fiscal questions, please email our fiscal team, cpafiscal@cde.ca.gov. And any programmatic questions, please email us at cpaacademies@cde.ca.gov. I'll leave this up for a moment. And we do have a few more things to share. Are there any other burning questions? Sounds like there aren't. Let's just go back real quick. All right, so just a few guidelines. Just please keep in mind that all expenditures do need to comply with the 2024-25 CPA expenditure guidelines. A couple of guidelines that you should make note of are that in the 1000s, 2000s, and 3000 object codes, exceeding 40% on personnel is not allowable. So the total spent on 1000, 2000, and 3000 needs to be less than 40% of your total budget. And then just this year, this is the last year that there is a cap on technology. So exceeding 25% on technology purchases does require pre-approval. Please email us if there's something you'd like to purchase that takes you beyond 25% of your grant funds. And then next year, this cap on technology will be removed. If you have any capital outlay purchases, so capital outlay, I see that we're celebrating, thank you, celebrating that there will be no technology cap. Capital outlay purchases, so this is a purchase that is $5,000 or more on a single item. So if there's something you'd love to purchase for your academy, but it's on the more expensive side, please email us at at CPA Academies or at KPAR, and we will look over your request. You'll just need to fill out a 2-page capital outlay form and submit a quote from the vendor. And then we are happy to look at those items and make sure they align with the career focus of your academy. And if they do, we are happy to help you spend that money. And then lastly, expenditures should include a brief description. Please make sure that there is a clear connection to the career focus of the academy. And this could include places you want to take your students for field trips, supplies you'd like to purchase for your academy, staff duties, etc. And we do have a few more webinars coming up to support you. So next month, we'll be offering another KPAR webinar. This will be the final webinar before the KPAR report is due. But as I mentioned before, we offered one last month. We recorded it. We've got the PowerPoint for you. All of that has already been uploaded to the website California Educators Together, which you can see in the middle of the screen. If you haven't yet joined our California Educators Together page, please join us. We're posting lots of good stuff on there for you. So you'll simply go to that website, and then in the top right-hand side, there is a login. So either create a login, or maybe you already have one. And once you're logged in, search for groups and type in California Partnership Academies, and you'll find our page. You just click the join button, and you can access all of our webinars. Other things you'll find on that page are the KPAR webinar, the end of project expenditure report webinar that we have today, and the slides, and then also the budget builder webinar and slides. Those are all posted. So then in August, we'll offer another end of project expenditure report webinar, just like this one. So just before that one's due. And then in September, we will be kicking things off this fall with the budget builder webinar. And just a heads up, the budget builder tool is opening June 1st. For those of you that want to get a head start on your budget before the end of the school year, before you take off on summer break, this is all available to you. All right, team, are there more questions in the Q&A?
Is the capital outlay threshold increasing in 25-26 school year?
That is a good question. And nothing has been formally decided, but the topic has been brought up. I don't have an answer for you today on that, but that is a great question. And we'll take that back to the team to see if that will be changing from $5,000 to something higher. What else do we have?
We have one asking, do the expenditure report guidelines apply to the fiscal year 2023-25 grant award, or does it apply to fiscal year 2024-25?
They apply to both. And Cindy, correct me, or Michelle or Alicia, correct me if I'm wrong, but the 40% cap, for example, on personnel, and the 25% cap on technology, that's the same for 23-25, correct?
Correct. Can you, do we have an estimate of when the 25-26 grant will be released?
Yes, yeah. So we will be making sure that the grant funds are sent out in the fall. We know that this year was challenging and that a lot of CPAs didn't get their funding until late winter, early spring, and that created some pressure for you to spend. So we are starting this process as soon as the KPAR reports come through and we've had a chance to look at them. This is usually around August that we are then putting things together, and you should be getting your funds early fall.
When will the paper EOP be sent out?
The paper EOP, and fiscal analysts, you can chime in, but my understanding is that will go out just at the very beginning of July, right after this grant cycle wraps up. So right after the June 30th end of the grant cycle comes, they will be sending that document out to you that first week of July.
So for the capital outlay requests moving forward are in the KPAR starting 25-26 school year?
That's a great question. We don't currently have capital outlay requests set up in KPAR. Our IT team is working on setting that up. It's not activated yet, but it's something that they're building. So we will roll that information out to you as it comes. But our goal is to have everything in PGMS, just so that everything is in one spot. Everything's digital. And we're trying to streamline things for you so that you don't have to keep track of what's paper, what's digital. So we're working on that. We'll work on it over the summer and hopefully have a capital outlay system in KPAR for the fall.
This is another question. I thought the coordinators were not responsible for this. Are some of the coordinators also fiscal analysts?
We do not designate who fills these roles. So it depends on the district and it depends on the academy. But generally speaking, most of the reports are initiated and worked on by the academy coordinator, is the one in charge of them. You can absolutely get help from your entire team. So hopefully you're collaborating with your fiscal team at the district office. Same goes for the KPAR report, right? You want to lean on your team for a lot of this data. And so this is why we give access to more people than just the academy coordinator. The district financial officer and fiscal analysts also have access in KPAR to the EOP, and they can help you work on this. So make sure you're working as a team and communicating with your entire CPA team. But I should add that ultimately the academy coordinator wants to ensure that it's been submitted. So you want to sign in, make sure that because that's what's going to signal the trigger of it then going to the principal and then to the district financial officer. So academy coordinators should be responsible for making sure that this has been submitted.
When is the budget builder for 25-26 due?
So the budget builder will be due, I believe it is September 30th. So this will open in a couple of weeks. This will open June 1st. You'll have June, July, August, and September, 4 months to finish your proposed budget. Keep in mind, though, that you have to get your signatures on your side before it comes to us. So you want to start working on that sooner than later so that, again, it goes through the chain of commands on your side before CDE receives it. But yeah, September 30th is the due date. These are great questions. Any others?
There is one person asking if you can confirm that the hourly rate for budget planning for industry partners was increased to $100 per hour.
That's for the upcoming grant cycle. So for the current grant cycles, the 23-25 and 24-25, it's $75 for business partners. But that is changing. We're moving it up to $100 for this next grant cycle, so 25-26. That will be a future change that is just around the corner.
Oh, one person was asking if they broke things down a little too much in materials, like with office supplies, can they combine them all into one and delete the others? Or can they zero out the others and leave a note saying that they combined all those office supplies into one?
I would say do whatever is easiest for you. So you could, if you want to simplify it and just do some more generic supplies, that is fine. I would say either way is fine. Just do what is easiest for you, what makes the most sense for you. We want this to be a simple process.
Somebody wanted to know how they can identify the approval workflow of the EOP in the PGMS system.
Oh yeah, so I can go back to that slide. So this is the approval. These are the folks involved in the approval process. And so it first is submitted by the person that completes it, right? This is either the coordinator or maybe a fiscal staff member at the district office. Once you hit that, you've gone through each of the object codes and you hit that final save and submit button, it will then send an automated email to the principal for them to look it over and approve it. And then once the principal approves, the DFO will get an automated email. And once they click approve, then it comes to us. So this all needs to happen on or before August 29th of 2025. And so again, just please make sure that the principal's information and the district financial officer's information in KPAR is up to date. We do have a handful of DFOs who are not, I believe, are not accurate right now in some of the academy contacts, and it's causing some issues with getting final approval on things. Anything else?
Yes. I'm a new coordinator just starting this year. Do I still have to do the paper EOP for 23-25? I don't have access to much of the information.
Yes, so you would still need to do that, absolutely. Otherwise, you would be billed for anything that you'd have to send the money back to the CDE. So we want to make sure that that paperwork is taken care of. But since you're new and you don't have access, I would recommend reaching out to your other team members. So if you know the person whose role you filled and are able to contact them, that would be great. Or reach out to your district office. Go into KPAR, see who is listed in your contacts, and I would send an email to all of them asking if they can help you figure out what was originally budgeted for and how those funds were expended. But yes, you'll definitely want to follow through with completing the EOP.
We do have another question from someone saying their district analyst seems to think that they should go back to the budget builder, make the changes there, get these revisions approved by CDE, and then complete the EOP. They think that that might be easier. Is that correct?
That's a really great question. Thanks for asking that. So while you might think you need to go back to the original proposed budget and change everything, that's really not necessary. And in fact, at this point, if your budget is certified, which it should be, that's already closed. Like that's kind of locked and done. We're not looking at the proposed anymore. We're really just looking at the end of project. And it's going to be more efficient just to tell us in the EOP how you spent your funds, because that's the report that will come through to us. At the CDE, we're not looking at the proposed budget anymore at this point. We're looking at the end of project that shows the original narrative and amounts you plan to spend contrasted with the actual expenditures. The only case in which you would need to make a revision to your originally proposed budget is if you're making a pretty large purchase. So say, for example, you sent in a capital outlay form for a piece of equipment that was, $15,000 or $20,000, more than 20% of your total CPA grant funds. If it's over 20% of your CPA grant funds that you need to move from one object code to another to be able to make that purchase, that does require a budget revision. Budget revisions are rare though, because that's a significant amount of money to be able to need to transfer from one object code to another. But it does happen. So if you suspect you need to do a budget revision, just go ahead and email us and we'll help guide you through that process. But again, budget revisions are just for purchases that require moving over 20% of your CPA grant funds, say from the 5,000 object code into the 4,000s.
Oh, somebody wants to know if the PGMS system identifies where in the approval process the EOP is.
That's a good question. I would imagine that if you're in there and you've started your work and maybe you've gotten through the 3,000 object code and you're hitting save every time, it should indicate what's been worked on and what hasn't. But you do need to click through each of those object codes and hit the save button to show us that you've worked through each of them before you get that final submit button at the bottom.
Oh, somebody would like to know if we might consider holding a webinar that is more of like an overview for new coordinators. They said such as like a crash course for being a new CPA coordinator.
Yeah, actually, we are planning a CPA coordinator 101, Academy Coordinator 101 course this fall. And we are working on the plans for that over the summer. So please be checking your email, and hopefully you're on our listserv. The listserv is where you get access to all these webinars and things like that. Yeah, so look for our emails early this fall, and we do plan to offer a crash course. It's a great idea. Thank you.
Here's someone who says, I am the account tech that helps oversee the budget. Will I need access to PGMS?
Yes. So if you need access, I'll go ahead and share our email addresses again. If you don't currently have a PGMS account, please just email us at kpar@cde.ca.gov and we'll get you set up.
So Kaiwin, there's another question. We have to have an approved budget before funds will be released, right?
Well, your approved budget, your proposed budget is due on September 30th. And that's right about the time that you should be getting your grant funds. So it doesn't perfectly align with we get your proposed budget and then your grant funds come out. We're working on the process because it takes a lot of steps in the CDE for GANs to go through. We're working on that as early as summer. And so you might end up getting your funds before that proposed budget is totally complete. But ideally, yes, ideally we get the proposed budget first and then those funds are released. It's not perfect timing though.
So the 50% is released upon the grant award being signed. And thereafter, they get the final payment.
Thank you, Cindy, for clarifying.
For adding.
These are all great questions. We still have time for a few more if there's any other questions out there.
So there's a question. Does the description of the budget and the narrative of the expenditures have to be exactly the same?
The description of the budget and the narrative.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if you're making a change, if you had planned to spend your money in a certain way, maybe you plan to buy office supplies for your CPA, and you bought something slightly different, then you would change the narrative. That the narrative, the updated narrative, would be different from the narrative that you did back in the fall. We would expect to see something different, and then a different amount expended. If you didn't spend a different amount, then don't worry too much about getting really detailed and nitpicky. But yes, the narrative, if you made a change in the way you plan to spend your money, then the narrative should be different when you do your EOP. Because if you didn't change, if there were no changes to a line item, if you spent your money the way you plan to spend it, you don't need to touch that line item. You leave it as is.
So here's another question. I'm the fiscal analyst that took over and I don't have access to last year's documents. Which email should she email?
Don't have access. You might want to email our fiscal team at cpafiscal@cde.ca.gov. They would be able to provide documentation regarding any grants that were given out. And
And
if you need a
please,
login, oh, go ahead,
yeah,
Cindy.
please provide your CPA ID and school, of course.
We have a clarifying point on a question that was previously asked. They said, does the PGMS system tell in whose queue, whether it be coordinator, principal, district financial officer, or with CDE, the EOP is waiting for approval?
Thank you. Okay, I understand what is being asked. My apologies if I didn't answer that correctly before. So I will double check on that. I believe so. So in the budget building tool, when you did your proposed budget, the coordinators submitted, and then it came to us. We looked at it and then we sent it to the principals for approval. Then the principals reviewed the budget and I went to the district financial officer. On your main screen, when you sign into KPAR and you have the Academy sections list of all the different pieces or pages you can go to, it shows on that main screen what stage your budget is in. So it either said CDE approve or awaiting CDE approval or awaiting principal approval or waiting for DFO approval. I will double check with our IT team, but I am assuming and hoping that it is the same for the end of project so that it's really clear who needs to sign off. So I will follow up on that and make sure that that is a feature so that when you sign in and look at your main KPAR screen, you can see the status of your EOP. And that will be really helpful too. If you notice that it's sitting there and the principal hasn't signed off on it, please reach out to your principal right away and prompt them to look it over and sign off. And same for the district financial officer. And if you find that the contact for your DFO is not up to date, make sure that gets updated right away. So I'll follow through on this one.
So Kaiwin, will we be able to copy the budget builder once the report is approved to be used by our ordering team? Can we download the report?
Can we download it? Download the
Budget
proposed
builder.
budget or download the budget builder? Possibly. That's another great question. Let's
Yeah,
look
that's a good
into that.
question.
Can we? Okay, I will follow up on this one too. Can we download? Okay. Whoever asked that question, if you just go ahead and email us directly, I will make sure to follow up and get the answer to you. But please do email me or someone from our team. What other questions do we have out there?
When will the next year's grant allocations be posted?
Cindy, do you know the answer to that question?
So the answer would be you have to do the KPAR report and that will tell you your budget amount, your allocation amount. We go over that information and process your grant award. And as Kaiwin said previously, that the approval process for grant awards sometimes takes 2 months to be mailed out to your district. But you're going to create your budget, so hopefully by the time you get your budget approved, we'll have a grant award out to you.
Yeah, so when you submit that KPAR report on June 30th, that's when our fiscal team is able to look things over and get those GANs going over the summer. But as Cindy said, it takes a couple of months. So
we do have to wait for the state budget, July 1, to make sure we have our allocation.
Yes.
So let's see, that means the items purchased can be different from the budget if it used to the same activity, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. It's very likely that you purchase something slightly different than you planned for, and that's absolutely fine.
as long as it's not a capital outlay and it's not approved.
Yeah.
Yes, be pre-approved. That's it.
All right, everybody. Well, if there are any other questions that cross your mind after we close up here, you can always shoot us an email. And as always, thank you so much for showing up today, for taking time out of your day to be with us. We hope this was helpful. And again, we'll be posting this to our California Educators Together page if you would like to watch this recording all over again. Have a great day, everyone. Take care. We'll see you soon.